Last year, one law school took in 120 transfer students and lost exactly one. Only one out of 120 in, one out. That is not a school in a transfer market. That's a school that is the transfer market. Now, take a look at this number. In 2011, 2,491 students transferred law schools in this country. Last year, that number was only 1,098. So the whole market got cut by more than half in about 10, 15 years. So the pool shrank. And there is one law school, Georgetown, that now takes roughly 120 of the 1,100 transfers left in America. So you do the math on that, that's nearly 11% of all law school transfer students in the entire country walking into one law school in Washington, D.C. And today I'm going to share with you why they're doing it, why the school on the other end of that trade is quietly bleeding students, and why the back door your friends keep whispering about, the whole just go somewhere cheap, crush 1L, and then transfer up plan, is a much worse bet this year than it was when people started giving that advice. Now, I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005. I read the 509 reports. Every law school files with the ABA, the ones almost nobody actually opens. And the transfer numbers in those filings tell a story that the admissions offices would rather you not put together. Now, let's start with what a transfer even is, because the whole thing hinges on one detail that most people miss. You apply to law school, you get in somewhere, you go. That first year, they call it 1L, first year of law school. Now, say you do really well that first year, like I'm talking about, you are in the top of your class. A bunch of higher ranked schools will let you apply to jump in as a second year. So you transfer up. You graduate with a fancier school's name on your diploma. That is the back door. It's the thing people talk about on Reddit forums like it's a cheat code. And it's real, it does still happen. But peak transfer year in my data was 2013. Over 2,500 students transferred. That was the era when everybody and their cousin was telling scared applicants the same thing. You can't get into a top school? No problem. Go somewhere easier, get great grades, transfer up later. The back door was wide open. Then it started closing. By 2016, it was down under 1,900. Then last year, only 1,098. So in the years since that advice became gospel, the actual door people are trying to walk through has shrunk by more than half. The advice got more popular right as the opportunity got smaller. That is the trap. The plan sounds better every year, but it works less often every year. Now, let me tell you why it shrank. The whole system has fewer people in it than they did at the peak. Law school enrollment contracted hard after the early 2010s, so there are simply fewer 1Ls sitting at lower schools waiting to jump. And the schools that used to quietly feed transfers up the ladder got tired of doing the recruiting and the teaching only to hand their best students to a competitor for free. So when a student transfers out, the school that lost them ate every cost and got nothing in return. And so the schools started fighting to keep the people they have. Fewer students in the school, and the ones there are get held tighter. And so watch what Georgetown did. While the whole market was collapsing, Georgetown didn't shrink along with it. Go back to 2011, Georgetown took 71 transfers that year out of 2,491 nationally. That's under 3% of the market. It's big, but it's not crazy. Then last year, Georgetown took 120 out of a market of 1,098, again, that 11% figure. So the national pool got cut in half, and Georgetown's slice of it nearly quadrupled. Everybody else pulled back, and Georgetown hit the gas. So I want you to see how far ahead of the pack Georgetown really is, because this is where it stops being a normal story. The next biggest buyer in the country last year was Columbia, and Columbia took 50 transfers, NYU took 42, Berkeley took 44, Harvard took 37. These are the richest, most famous law schools in America, and Georgetown took more than double what any single one of them did. And this is not some fluke year. I went back through the filings. Georgetown took 122 transfers in 2013, same in 2023, same in 2024, 120 last year, all around that same figure. And so while the national market got cut in half around it, Georgetown ran the same 120 or so a year operation for over a decade. And that's not an accident, of course. It's part of their business model. And so why would they want so many transfers while everybody else is backing away from it? Every year, a law school has to report its numbers to the ABA. The most important ones that feed the rankings are the median LSAT score and median GPA of the incoming class. Median just means the middle number. So line up everybody who started, The person in the exact middle, that's your median. Schools live and die by it. A drop of 1 point in the median LSAT can cost a school their ranking spots, and that costs them applicants and money. But there's a loophole. The medians only count the first year entering class, the people who show up as brand new 1Ls. Transfers come in as second year students. They started somewhere else. And so a transfer student's LSAT score never touches the school's reported median ever. And so a transfer comes in as a second year, so they finish out 2 full years at the new school. Georgetown can bring in 120 of them, collect 2 years of tuition from each, and not one of those 120 LSAT scores shows up in the number US News uses to rank the school. The transfers are invisible to the ranking. They are free tuition with no cost to the median. And so it's basically free money. Georgetown already built the building. They already hired the professors. They add 120 more paying students in year 2 who can't drag down their reported numbers no matter what they scored on the LSAT. That's about as clean as revenue gets in higher education. And this school is charging over $83,000 a year in tuition. 3 years of that is north of $250,000 before you paid for a single month of rent in Washington, D.C. Multiply the sticker price by a chunk of 120 students who mostly aren't getting big scholarships, and you see why the transfer window is one of the most profitable things a top law school runs. And so, again, transfers don't count in the median, so top school can sell a lot of them with zero ranking costs. And for every student walking into Georgetown, that's somebody walking out of another school. So look at American University, also in Washington, D.C. Last year, American lost 51 students to transfer and took in 13. So net, they exported 38 students up the ladder. So American recruited those students. They gave a bunch of them scholarship money to show up. They taught them the hardest, most expensive year, the 1L year. And then their best performers, the top of the class, packed up and carried their tuition to higher ranked schools. American did the expensive part, the recruiting in the brutal first year. The schools above them collected the finished product, a student with a proven year of grades already on the transcript. And then there's GW, George Washington, sitting right in the middle of this. They took in 46 transfers, lost 33. So they're doing both at once. They're pulling up students from schools below them while they hemorrhage their own best 1Ls to the schools above them. They are a floor and a ceiling at the same time. Every summer, they poach 46 of somebody else's best and watch 33 of their own best walk out the door towards Georgetown and the rest of the top. That is the law school food chain. Nobody in the middle is safe. They're all somebody's feeder and somebody's target at the same time. And so money and talent flow upward every summer. A student grinds out a great first year at a lower school, transfers up, tuition follows them. The lower school ate the risk and the recruiting costs. The higher school takes no LSAT gamble at all because the kid already proved they could do the work. And none of this shows up in anybody's median. And so if you want to be in the best position to get into better law schools, to transfer up, of course, you've got to finish near the top of your class. And that's tough because everyone in the school is trying to do the exact same thing and only a handful of seats open up above you. Ideally, you're not going to have to transfer law schools. Ideally, you get into a great law school from the beginning. Of course, the question is, how do you do that? Based on your LSAT score and your GPA. And of course, the thing is, your GPA is probably pretty fixed in this point in time. The LSAT score is still the big factor you can move the needle on. And so if you want my help getting the highest possible LSAT score, getting into more scholarship money, not needing to transfer because you already are up from the start, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now and later. You can book that free LSAT tutoring lesson with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet to help you jumpstart your LSAT prep. It's a quick reference PDF you can download right now, covering everything logical reasoning and reading comprehension. You can grab that free cheat sheet at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. Again, link is below the video, pinned in the chat, in my bio as well. I see questions here in the chat. I'll get to as many of those as I can. Feel free to just keep dropping them in. I'm happy to help you out. Just scanning through the questions here. All right, so Dub asks, is a 3.3 GPA bad for law school standards? I don't like to speak in absolutes or make value judgments about what's good and bad. What I would speak about, though, is what is going to help serve you in achieving your goals. And so if you look at a given law school, what's their GPA median? If your GPA is at or above their median, it's good. If it's below their median, it's bad. And that being above the median serves your goals of getting into that school. Being below the median does not serve your goals. And so if your GPA is a 3.3 from undergrad, you should know that there is a lot of grade inflation in undergrad. It's a pandemic of grade inflation, I might say. It's basically just pretty bad. There's a lot of it. And so because it's so widespread, it's so ubiquitous, what that means is that a GPA that was good a decade or two ago is not good anymore. Even a 3.7 GPA is below all of the T14 law schools and a whole lot more beyond that. And so a 3.3 is below that many more law schools. And so if your GPA is low, you want to have a higher LSAT score to compensate. So look up the GPA median and the LSAT median of the law schools you want to attend. Consider that that is a trailing metric. It's last year's numbers, and law schools are always looking to raise up their numbers. And so keep that in mind when you're considering your targets. And if you want to get scholarship money, you want to be even higher still. So I would say look up the GPA of the median of the school that you're targeting. Get a higher LSAT score to compensate for it if you need to. Jack is asking about if I had the 3.2 GPA, but very hard class rigor. Unfortunately, the difficulty of the class is not a consideration for the law schools. They're just looking at what's your GPA, regardless of what you majored in, regardless of what classes you took. And that's because, look at it from their perspective, what are their incentives? The law schools, when they report the GPA to the American Bar Association, which in turn is where US News pulls the numbers from for inclusion in the rankings, they don't consider your major, the classes that you took. They don't know how to evaluate whether your classes were hard or not, or whether it was an easy A class or not. Of course, they could speculate. They could say, okay, well, if it was earned in a STEM class versus humanities, STEM, brutally curved, more rigorous, harder to do well. They could do that hypothetically, but they're not going to, because again, from their perspective, their incentives are not to care, because they just report the GPA regardless of where you earned it. Not saying it's fair, not saying it's right, but I don't make the rules. I just help you navigate the system. And so my goal is to get you better outcomes, not complain about what's fair or what's not fair. If your GPA is low, you either raise it up if you still can. If you're past that point, you focus on the LSAT. And for those of you who are still in undergrad, especially if you're a freshman or a sophomore, I do think it's premature to focus on the LSAT. I would say do what you can to get that GPA up. Take some easier classes if you need to. Take some summer classes at a local community college to boost up your GPA. Those are relatively cheaper credits than what you're paying for at a private university, so that might be the move for you. If you're later in college, if you're a senior or already out of undergrad, focus on the LSAT. For those who are curious about this, master's degree GPAs do not count. They are not factored into the calculations or the formulas or the law school admissions index of any particular school. They'll see it like a soft factor. They'll be able to look at it, but they're not formulating that number into their calculations. Girl is asking, which LSAT book would you best recommend to study and start with? I mean, I have my own LSAT books, but to be frank, I would not focus on books as your primary mechanism for studying for the LSAT, because the LSAT is online. I want you to get familiar with the format, the software, the interface, the functionalities of the LSAT that you'll actually be taking. And so I want you to practice like game day, taking your official LSAT practice tests on the Law School Admission Council Law Hub Advantage platform. You get 4 practice tests for free. You get the others with a Law Hub Advantage subscription. Well worth the investment, $120 for a full year of access to get all of the thousands and thousands of LSAT questions that are from previously administered exams. LSAC is not paying me to promote them. I wish they were, but honestly, they deserve the credit because they have made a pretty good exam, good in that it's rigorous, and I think it does a good job of performing the function it's meant to do. But beyond that, of course, the LSAT exams, for the most part, don't come with explanations, and of course, there's no one that you could talk to or get feedback from on your approach. And so that's where services like mine come into the mix to give you personalized support and guidance on your LSAT study plan. And so if you want to talk through what your LSAT program could look like, your course of study to get you from your starting point, wherever you're at now, up to your goal score on your time frame, you can book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me, and we could talk through it together. You could book that free lesson at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I'm happy to help you out. Kyle's asking what matters more, LSAT or GPA? LSAT without a doubt, and you can see this in the law school admissions index for any given law school. They publish those indices for free. Nearly every school does, and you can see that in the weighting of those formulas, the LSAT scores weighed more heavily than GPA in virtually every single case for the 200 American Bar Association accredited law schools. And so in a way, that's good news. I know that you might not feel that way, but think of it this way. Let's say that you were an undergrad and you had a medical issue, a family issue, had difficulty adjusting, took some hard classes. Let's say you tried being pre-med initially and then switched gears to become pre-law and your GPA was tanked by those hard science classes. That your destiny is not set in stone, because given that the LSAT weighs more heavily, you still have room to offset whatever happened previously. And if you had a life crisis of some kind in undergrad that tanked your GPA for a semester or even a year, you got dinged with an F for whatever reason for one particular class, the LSAT will still help to offset that. Ajay is asking, would you say it's worth using practice tests 14 to 20 for practice questions, or are those exams too old? So the LSAT practice tests are numbered numerically. In the old numbering system, it was 1 to 94 before they removed logic games. Then when they removed logic games, they reorganized the exams, and now they're numbered 101 to 159, still the higher numbered exams being newer, more recent practice material. And so when you say practice tests 14 to 20, my first thought is, are you using the old format exams that still have logic games? If so, I wouldn't bother. And then secondly, even if you were saying 114 to 120, my question would be, why work off of such old exams anyway? I mean, if you're studying for a year, then of course you have time to do all the exams. But if you're taking the LSAT in 3-6 months, I would still focus on the newer ones. And so I would, all else being equal, focus on the newer exams in the modern format, focusing on, say, 130 to 159. That would be sufficient unless you've got more time, but budget them out. So in other words, say to yourself, okay, I'm taking the LSAT in September. I've got roughly 2 months. And so if I do one exam a week for 10 weeks, that means I could go from exam 149 to 159 or so. And then maybe use another 5 or so for individual sections. But I don't think that you need to work back all the way to the 14 to 20 range in most cases. Matthew's asking, do you know how being a 3-year KJD affects upper T14 admissions, 408 GPA practice tests in the 170 plus range? I mean, it's largely numbers driven whether you're a KJD or not. And so a 408 GPA is, of course, super impressive. That's going to help a lot. The practice test being 170 plus is great, but we got to translate the practice test result into actual score result, right? So let's lock in that 170 plus. If you want upper T14, consider that Harvard and Yale have medians of 174 for the LSAT. And so if you want upper T14, a 170 is not enough necessarily. You'd still be below median. You want to have ideally 174, 175 plus to maximize your odds of admission. And that's going to matter more than whether you're a KJD or not. Of course, if you have internships, extracurriculars, talk about that, tout that, but the numbers still matter more. Nissi Abel's asking, I'm taking the August LSAT in 1 month. Any tips? Without more context, my number one piece of advice would be make sure you're properly simulating test day conditions, taking full-length timed practice tests under the real-world environment. You'll take the actual exam in as best you can. And so for those who aren't aware, the LSAT format is changing. The LSAT is going back to in-person for virtually everybody, starting with the August LSAT. No more in-person, only with rare exceptions. And the user interface is changing as well. So you want to get familiar with that. Take your practice test on the LSAC Law Hub platform to get used to the new interface, the highlighting, the underlining, the process of elimination function as well. All of that's a bit different than it used to be. This is to reduce the incidence of cheating, which has been happening with the online LSAT. I've done some videos on that in the past, of course. You can see on the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel. Bottom line, get familiar with it sooner rather than later. Don't take your practice tests in books. Don't take them in apps on your phone. Don't use a third-party source that's unofficial because it won't reflect the actual test day experience. So use LawHub, get familiar with that. The test day is 4 sections back-to-back with only one 10-minute break in the middle between sections 2 and 3. That's the exam. That's the number one thing I would do. I saw you mentioned you're at a 155 right now, looking for 170. A 15-point increase doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen without really putting in the work. And so if you want some guidance on evaluating your study plan, getting some feedback on your weak areas and how to address them, you could book the free tutoring lesson with me and we could talk through it more. Links to my bio and below the video as well. Matthew's asking, what's your opinion on paying a lot for upper T14 law schools? Are there any schools you'd go to no matter the price? I'll say this. I mean, for a lot of people, it probably makes sense to pay sticker for Harvard or Yale or Stanford. If you want to go into big law, if you want to get a clerkship with the federal government, if you want to have portability of your JD nationwide or even internationally, then the brand of a Harvard or Yale or a Stanford will carry you pretty far. That being said, it doesn't make sense for a lot of people. All of this is contingent on what are your career goals? What do you want to do with your law degree? If you want big law or you want clerkships, going to a top 14 or upper T14, like a T6, T3 law school would make sense because they have the best placement for big law and clerkships. That being said, if you don't want big law, if you don't want clerkships, if you want to do public interest or government work or work for a family office, then it might make more sense to go to a lower ranked school and get more scholarship money or even get a full ride and not take on the debt. It only makes sense to pay sticker if you will be taking on a job that will make it easy for you to pay off that debt over time. I don't want you to be shackled or weighed down by debt and then have to make tough decisions with your career that you'd rather not do. So you've got to know what you want to do with your law degree, and that will allow you to make a more informed decision about whether it's worth taking on the debt or not. The reason people pay sticker for these top law schools is because they want very particular outcomes, and those outcomes typically pay very well. But if you're more concerned with other types of careers that don't pay so well, then it might not make sense. So do that soul searching and have those discussions now before you take on the debt and sign on the dotted line. User 6384 is asking, once I register for the LSAT, will they send me my test center location or do we just go to one? So what happens is you register for the LSAT. That means you say, I'm going to take the LSAT in August or September or October or what have you. You can sign up for that now, by the way. And then a few weeks prior to the LSAT, LSAC opens up scheduling and lets you choose a particular day and time and testing location. They've got a new rule starting with the August LSAT, where the order in which you register for the LSAT determines the order in which you can schedule your LSAT day, time, and location. And because the LSAT's back to in-person, there are, of course, a limited number of test centers, limited number of seats. The best test centers, the most convenient locations, the best times are going to get grabbed up first. And so it's like a first come, first served system or queue system now. And so if you know you're taking the LSAT in September, October, or November, I would recommend that you sign up for it now. You register for it now so that you'll have a better pick when it comes to choosing locations and days and times. I don't want you to have to travel really far on test day or have to wake up really early in the morning or choose a time and day that doesn't work for you. Don't love this new system, but it is what it is. I get why they're doing it. But you got to know what you're getting into and sign up early if you can. Luke is asking, how much do letters of recommendation matter? What makes a good rec letter? I would say specificity and detail make for more compelling letters. And the last thing you want is someone writing you a vague ChatGPT sounding letter that speaks in generalities and doesn't really say anything specific about you. You want someone who is really going to take the time to write you a truly personal letter and will include lots of specifics about you, where the reader of that letter feels like this person really knows you and is speaking to your character and giving specifics that make it come to life so that they actually have evidence backing up whatever claims they have about you. And if the person you ask for that letter seems hesitant, that's a red flag. If they say to you, is there anyone else who could write this letter for you? They probably don't really want to do it. And so your job, if you're planning ahead, is to cultivate the relationships with your future would-be recommenders so that when it comes time to ask, they will actually know you well and they will actually be able to speak to your specific character and your work ethic and why you'd be a great law student and lawyer. And you've got time. I mean, even now, even if you're applying to law school this fall, you could still take the next month or two to cultivate those relationships and then ask for the letter in August or September. Ideally, you already have the relationships and you can ask now. If you haven't already asked the person, but you think you could ask them now, do it now. And as for employers versus professors, I see a question on that. A mix of both is fine. What matters more than who writes it is how well they write it. And don't go for the prestige of the recommender, go for how well they know you. That's going to matter a lot more. So go for the less impressive sounding title over the deeper connection. Got a question from Isabel asking, what's the best time to start applying for fall 2027? So if you want to apply for starting law school in fall 2027, that means applications open in fall 2026, which is 2 months from now. And so the best time to apply is when applications open. Applications open for law school in September, 2 months from now. Law school admissions is conducted on a rolling basis, meaning that law schools evaluate applications in the order in which they receive those applications. And so ideally, you're ready to hit submit on your application when they open in September. That means your application's complete where you've got your LSAT score received already, you have your rec letters in, you've already written your application essays, you've got your transcript sent over from your undergrad to the Law School Admission Council. You do all of that early in advance, of course. And ideally, you're applying earlier because when you apply to law school earlier, it's easier to get in, and there's also more scholarship money available. If you apply later, there are fewer seats available and it's a bit harder to get in. That being said, better to apply later with a higher LSAT score than earlier with a lower LSAT score. And so if you need more time to retake the LSAT and get your score up, that's fine. Law schools don't take the average of multiple LSAT scores. They only take into consideration the highest LSAT score on your record. And so let's say you take the August LSAT and it's not what you needed. And so you want to retake it in September or October, or let's say you took it in June and you're retaking it in September. That's fine. It's better to give it another month or two, get your LSAT score up even just a couple of points. That will more than offset the delay of applying a month or two later. And if you think about it, I mean, law schools have no incentive to care when you applied because they're not evaluated based on that metric. In contrast, the LSAT score that you achieve that you can give them, that can, if it's high enough, that can help them raise their medians. That can help them attract more applicants by getting a higher standing in the rankings. And so well worth applying a little bit later with a higher score if you need that time. Oscar's asking, I will start studying for the LSAT soon. Should I take a practice test to see what my score is? That's a good starting point. Yeah, I mean, take a practice test, a cold diagnostic, just to establish a baseline, a benchmark from which you can measure your later future progress. Keep in mind that all that practice test tells you is that you've got some work ahead of you. Typically, the results of these practice tests are often discouraging because you haven't yet done the work. The LSAT's kind of like a foreign language. And so if you take a diagnostic, it just tells you, hey, you have not yet learned the language of the LSAT, but of course you can. You've got some work ahead of you, but you've got plenty of time. I mean, you could take the LSAT in any of August, September, October, November, this calendar year, still apply early enough this cycle. Even taking the LSAT in January or February is not too late if you need the time to put in the work. I mean, there's a lot of different question types on the LSAT to learn a lot of different methods of reasoning. In logical reasoning, for example, you've got strengthen, weaken, flaw, parallel, resolve, and so on. There's also reading comprehension to work on. That's a whole third of the test. Then you've got pacing and time management, doing individual sections and full-length exams to build up your endurance. And so one thing we do for our students at LSAT Unplugged is we create for you a personalized study plan, laying out exactly what to do every single day from now till your test. We map it out literally down to the day, considering weekdays versus weekends, holidays, vacations, targeting your weak areas, having you take a practice test each week, ideally, reviewing it in depth, looking at your mistakes, what you're getting wrong and why you're getting it wrong, so that we can help you avoid making that same mistake again. We use a framework called the Socratic review method, similar to what you do in law school, because we're not going to be there on test day and we can't take it for you. So we've got to give you the confidence, the clarity, and the skill to perform when it truly matters. And so we ask you a series of guiding questions live in the coaching, and you can also adopt that same process for your own self-studying. For example, was it your approach to the question that was off, or was it the text of the question that threw you off? Was it a tempting wrong answer choice or an unappealing right answer choice? Because if we can get down to the root cause of what you're getting wrong and why you're getting it wrong, then we can help you avoid making that same mistake again. And so if you want to talk through what your personal study plan could look like, a coaching program to get you to your goal, you can book the free LSAT tutoring lesson with me. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. I've also put together a free LSAT cheat sheet PDF. It's a quick reference download covering everything on the LSAT, both logical reasoning and reading comprehension. You can grab that at unpluggedprep.com/cheat sheet. For those just joining, I do these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. I'll be back on Monday, same time, same place. I'll see you all then. In the meantime, all the best. Take care. Thanks for joining.